Hello and welcome again to another short educational video courtesy of investingsuccess.ca. Today is the 17th of July 2023. There are two different ways to define or to record the position of a planet in our cosmos. The first way is what I call the heliocentric way. So imagine if you were on the sun. That's your viewpoint. And from your viewpoint on the sun, you're looking out into space and you spot off in the distance a planet. Maybe it's Venus, maybe it's Mars, maybe it's Jupiter, it doesn't matter. You want to describe the coordinates of that planet. Well, the first thing you're going to determine is the ecliptic plane. That is the plane of motion. I think I've referred to it as a racetrack, where the planets orbit around the sun. And the planets, as they orbit, will be on either side of the ecliptic plane. So then, as for the planet that you have spotted out in space, you will describe its position by how far it is above the ecliptic plane. And that's what we call the planetary declination. And if you've read my astrology almanac, you'll know that I make many references in there to declination. And in fact, W.D. Gann, back in his day, was a big proponent of planetary declination. The other coordinate that you need to describe the position of this planet in space is where it is relative to a 360-degree circle. You're going to define a 0 point in that 360-degree circle, and the planet will be somewhere relative to that 360-degree starting point. That's what we call the right ascension. So to sum it up, if you're on the sun, if that is your viewpoint, you're going to describe planets out in the cosmos in terms of their declination and right ascension. Now, there's another way that you can describe the position of a planet, and that is using what I call the geocentric method. So here we are standing on Earth. We can look out into the night sky and we can see various planets at various times of a given month. So how do we describe the position of the planet that we see out in space? You're going to do it again in terms of two coordinates. You're going to measure how far it is above the ecliptic, and that is what we call the latitude. And you're going to describe where that planet is relative to a 360-degree circle. That is what we call the longitude. The starting point for longitude is, of course, Greenwich, 0 degrees on any globe or in any atlas. That's standard procedure. So latitude and longitude using our viewpoint from here on Earth. Now, I've never used planetary latitude in any of my financial astrology almanacs. However, I recently did some reading and I started to do some investigating, and you know what? I am almost thinking that the human animal might be somewhat hardwired to this concept of latitude. And I'm going to show you some segments of some charts here very shortly. And I think I'm going to be able to illustrate to you the importance of keeping tabs on the latitude of a given planet. So using some of the software that I've got, SolarFire Gold, I can generate a chart of planetary latitude. So here's a chart for the planet Mars, and this chart encompasses 2023 and 2024. So from our viewpoint here on Earth, we can see that there will be times when the planet Mars will cross through the ecliptic, 0 degrees. There will be times when it is relatively high above the ecliptic. Let's call that the maximum latitude. There will be times when it is relatively far below the ecliptic. We'll call that the minimum. And then along the way, between these points of max and min, it will always be crossing the 0 degree point on the ecliptic. And so, in terms of looking at price charts, I'm going to be looking then to see if there is a change of trend when planets such as Venus and Mars are at either 0 degrees of latitude, or their maximum latitude, or their minimum latitude. So let's take a closer look and see if we can make the correlation. Okay, so here's a chart of the E-mini NASDAQ 100. And this chart spans most of 2021 and the first half of 2022. And so to really make the determination as to whether latitude is having an effect, I find it best if you generate some sort of a price oscillator, which is indicative of changing trend. And the oscillator that I've chosen for these various examples is the MACD. And I've used the standard settings in any software program, 12, 26, and 9. And so let's go back here now to the latter part of March 2021. Notice that the MACD is indicating a crossover. It's telling us the trend is changing. It's becoming positive. So is there anything else happening around about that same time? Sure there is. Here's Mars. It is at one of its so-called maximum latitude points. And how this affects human emotion, not quite sure, but it looks like there is some kind of an effect because, yes, the trend did change. It started to change right at this Mars maximum latitude, and you had a decent little rally, which eventually pulled back and then gave way into another rally. Now, not every one of these trend turning points is going to be specifically related to Mars, but the ones that I have seen bear out a correlation. So, latter part of 2021, markets are overvalued. The Fed is indicating, we're going to start raising rates in 2022. There's a pending invasion of Ukraine by Vladimir Putin. And yet, in fact, yes, the market did reach a significant high and a turning point. And the MACD confirmed that with its crossover. What else was happening? Well, look at this. Mars was at its 0 latitude point. And shortly thereafter, the market gave one more surge, couldn't hold, human emotion changed, and we all became very fearful and negative and ran away, and the market started to tumble. Now, along the way, there was a counter trend rally in April, but there was a significant low that the market made in June. And from there, it did recover onto another counter trend rally. The MACD is telling you the trend is changing. What else is going on? Well, here you go. Mars is at one of its minimum latitude positions. So there's the correlation that seemingly exists. Now, Mars is not a real fast mover, and so you're not going to get a lot of these mins and maxes and zeros every month. But for the ones that I've been able to see and plot on the chart, the market does respond. Human emotion does change. Now, continuing on, here is a chart of the E-mini S&P 500. And we can see that the equity market made a significant low in June, and as we've discussed, that was Mars related. The market made another low in October, and so far this low has held and probably will continue to hold. What else was going on at the time? there was a Mars 0-degree latitude event, and the MACD is telling you that the trend is starting to recover and change. So again, a beautiful correlation. And here is another Mars event here. The MACD exhibits a crossover. And yes, you got a nice little rally and a subsequent pullback. But if you just follow the MACD and these Mars latitude events, you can catch some of these moves, and hopefully some of them turn into significant moves. But like I say, Mars is not a real aggressive mover, and you're not going to get these things on a monthly basis. But for the ones that do occur, pay attention. So when is the next Mars event to pay attention to? October 31, and that's going to be a 0 latitude event. I don't know what it's going to look like. Will it be a market maximum, a market minimum, a counter trend rally that starts or stops? I don't know. I just know that circle October 31 on your calendar. Pay attention to what's happening. Something will happen. Now, let's take this one step further here. Crude oil. Here's a chart of crude oil futures, WTI. And let's look at crude oil in the context of the planet Venus. And so here's a chart that covers a good portion of 2022 and 2023 to date. You can see that in April of 2022, there was a significant swing point on crude. What was happening? Venus was at one of its 0 latitude events. In June of 2022, MACD says trend is changing. Whoa, okay, what's happening? Venus is at one of its minimum latitude events, and that turned out to be a big one. Crude fell from $120 a barrel down to below 80. Now, along the way, there was a Venus 0 latitude event. You'll notice that it didn't really do much in terms of turning the market. And the MACD was basically telling you that, yeah, we're kind of chopping along sideways to down. Nothing to really get excited about. However, I guess an aggressive trader using, something like an hourly chart probably could have scalped a little bit at that Venus event. September, early October, actually, 2022, MACD is saying trend is changing. Why? Yeah, here it is. You got Venus at one of its max latitude events, and sure, it gave you a nice little pop on crude. Here's another of its 0-degree events. MACD told you that the trend was changing, and sure enough, along comes the 0-degree event, and it did continue to fall. Into 2023, here is a minimum event. It marked a little peak of a rally. Here's a 0-degree event that marked a swing low. Here is a maximum event. Crude is just chopping sideways, and MACD is telling you nothing to see here. It's just going sideways. Now, recently, crude had a little burst to the upside that came at a Venus 0-degree event, and MACD told you trend was changing. Now, crude has subsequently pulled back a little bit in the past several days, but nevertheless, the uptrend sort of remains. It's very, very possible that we could see a few more dollars of rally. August the 20th, in about a month from now, that is the next latitude event for Venus, and it's one of these minimum latitude events. So circle the 20th of August on your calendar. I have no idea what's going to happen. It could be a high point that doesn't hold. It could be a low point for oil. Who knows? But something will happen around the 20th of August. Here's a little bit of history for you. Do you remember in 2020 when the price of crude for a couple days temporarily got completely out of whack and went actually negative. There it is. Venus latitude event. And what's interesting is the peak that sort of led to this negative pricing scenario, that was another Venus event. And so these things have to be watched every time they pop up, and watch them in the context then of an oscillator like the MACD. Now, wheat futures. There we go. 2022, the price of wheat shot up. War in Ukraine. There was concerns that Ukrainian wheat was not going to be exported. There would be global shortages of wheat, and everybody jumped on the wheat bandwagon and pushed it up, but it couldn't hold. It subsequently failed. The MACD was telling you, trend is changing. And here's our friend Venus at one of its latitude events. Here is a 0-degree event. Here's another event here where wheat reaches a turning point. MACD is telling you it's turning, the trend is changing. Here's another shallow little swing low. Here's another one down here. So August the 20th, something is going to happen on wheat. I don't know if it's a min or a max or what, but just circle August the 20th. Watch things like wheat, oil, NASDAQ, S&P. Watch everything and see what happens to human emotion on that date. Okay, so if you're going to look at stuff like that, you'll need to generate some kind of a chart to determine when these min-max events are. If you have the Optima software that I'm using, yes, it will do it for you. But otherwise, you're going to have to figure out either, from some software, or maybe there's a website out there online somewhere that lists some of these latitude tables. I don't know. But if you can find the dates, take a look at Venus and Mars in particular. And so we just know now that we got to pay attention to the 20th of August for Venus and the 31st of October for Mars. And in the meantime, I'll see what I can find and let you know. But I do think the human animal is hardwired in some way, shape, or form to respond to these changes in planetary latitude. And I will be discussing this in more detail in the 2024 version of the Financial Astrology Almanac. And if you're a little bit rusty on the concept of these oscillator type functions, such as the MACD, just remember that my recent book, Follow the Trend, was written for that reason. It's written to help you understand how you can identify changes of trend using these mathematical oscillators. And I break it all down in very simple layman terms. And it's a handy book to have by your desk. Don't forget to visit me at investingsuccess.ca. You'll find me also on Substack. And if you want to take some of my online courses, you'll find me on udemy.com. All right, that is it for me for today. So good luck with Planetary Latitude. Thank you very kindly for taking the time out of your busy day to listen. And we will talk real soon. Y'all have a good day now.